People began waiting for Okeke before they acted. A man named Obiora had a serious disagreement with his younger brother over their late father's compound. It was a matter that needed urgent attention, documents were involved, and delay would create problems. But Obiora told me one morning, "I want to hear what Okeke thinks first before I do anything." I asked him why. He shrugged. "He always knows the right thing." I pointed out that he had not spoken to Okeke about it yet. Obiora nodded slowly and said, "I know. But still." A woman named Neka postponed a decision about her daughter's schooling, an important, time-sensitive decision, because Okeke had traveled to the next town for 2 days and she felt she needed his input first. These were capable adults. People who had been making their own decisions for decades. But slowly, quietly, something in them had shifted. They no longer fully trusted themselves to feel, to judge, to decide. They were outsourcing their instincts. And Okeke had never once asked them to. Then something happened that removed all remaining doubt from my mind. A farmer named Emeka, a hard-working man whom the entire village respected, lost a piece of land. And not in a small way. A powerful man from a neighboring compound had quietly moved the boundary markers 6 feet during the dry season, claiming the land as his own. Everyone knew the land belonged to Emeka. The evidence was clear. The witnesses were alive and willing to speak. This was a genuine injustice, the kind that normally sets a whole village on fire with outrage. I went to Emeka's compound, expecting to find him furious. Instead, I found him sitting calmly on his veranda, eating a mango. I asked him how he was feeling about what had happened. He looked at me and said, almost gently, "These things happen to Bena. There is no need to make noise." I sat beside him for a long time after that, saying nothing, because there were no words for what I was feeling. Emeka was not a calm man. Emeka had once chased 3 men out of this same village over a missing chicken. And now he had lost land, actual, documented, inherited land, and he felt no urge to fight. I walked home slowly that evening. And I finally understood what Okeke was doing. He was not commanding people. He was reaching into them and quietly removing the part that resists. The part that says, "No, this is wrong. I will not accept this." I confronted Okeke the next morning. I found him near the borehole, washing his hands. I walked straight to him. No greeting. No delay. "Are you controlling people?" I asked. He turned and looked at me without surprise, as if he had been expecting this moment. He shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "I do not control people. I only quiet the part of them that wants to fight." I told him that was the same thing. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I do not command anyone. I have never told a single person what to do. Whatever they choose, they still choose themselves." I told him that a choice made without the ability to feel resistance is not a real choice. He looked at the ground. The silence stretched between us like a long road. Then he spoke so quietly, I had to lean forward to hear him. "I have tried to reduce it," he said. "I have tried to hold it back. But I do not fully know how to stop it." He looked up at me, and his eyes, for the first time since I had known him, were completely unguarded. "I genuinely do not know how to stop it, Bena." After that conversation, I began watching even more carefully. And what I saw frightened me in a new way. Because now it was not just arguments that had gone quiet. All strong emotions had begun to flatten. I attended a celebration for a young man who had returned from the city with a good job, a real achievement for his family. People clapped. People smiled. But the joy was thin. It had no depth to it. No shout. No tears of happiness. No grandmother ululating until her voice cracked. Just polite, gentle applause. Then I attended a burial. An old woman who had lived fully and loved loudly and argued beautifully. The kind of person whose absence should tear a hole in a community. Her children stood around the grave with quiet faces. No wailing. No beating of the ground. No calling her name back. People spoke of her calmly. They comforted each other in low voices. And I stood at the back of that burial and felt something break open inside my chest. Because what I was watching was not dignity. It was erasure. Peace had not brought the village rest. It had begun to take away what makes people human. The ability to feel the full weight of things. I tried warning the village. I spoke at the next open meeting. I stood up without being called, and I spoke clearly. I said that what we were experiencing was not natural peace. I said that something was being removed from us quietly. That real communities disagree. That healthy people feel anger when injustice happens. That grief without wailing is grief that has been swallowed, and swallowed grief does not disappear. It simply waits. People listened to me without interrupting. Which was itself strange, because in the old days someone would have cut me off, challenged me, or at least hissed from a corner. Now they simply listened with soft, smooth faces. When I finished, one man, a young man named Ifani, raised his hand politely and asked a genuine question. Not a mocking one. A sincere one. He looked at me with mild, honest curiosity and said, "Tabena, why is that a problem?" And the room nodded gently around him. And I stood there at the front of that meeting and felt what it means to be the only person screaming in a place where everyone else has already forgotten the sound of their own voice. I went back to Okeke that evening and I stood before him directly. "You are stealing people's freedom," I said. He did not argue. He did not raise his voice. He did not make excuses. He simply looked at me steadily and said, very softly, "This is better than how it was." I asked him who gave him the right to decide that. He looked out at the village, at the quiet compounds, the gentle evening light, the children playing without the sound of their parents quarreling in the background. He said, "Conflict destroys communities. Silence keeps them together. You have seen what arguing does here. You have seen men ruin families over pride. Women suffer because men cannot control their anger. Children grow up inside the noise of hate. I removed that. I removed only that." Then he turned to me. And he asked a question that I was not prepared for. He asked it quietly, without cruelty, without pride. Just a question. "Tabena," he said, "what has freedom ever truly solved here?" And for one terrible moment, I had no answer. I stood there with my mouth open. And the silence between us was the loudest thing I had ever heard. Then the leaders chose stability. They chose Okeke's version of peace. And they quietly moved me aside. And Okeke himself began to change, slowly losing the ability to feel his own anger, his own joy, his own pain. Until one evening he sat with me and finally said what I had long suspected. He told me about his past. About the time this same community, a village very like ours, had watched him suffer, had heard him cry out, had seen the injustice done to him, and had done nothing. Not one person had stood up. And in that silence, he had learned something. Not healing, just control. Control over the feeling that makes pain feel unbearable. He had controlled it so long that he no longer remembered how to release it. And now he whispered the most heartbreaking thing I had ever heard a man say. "If I stop controlling it, I do not know who I will become." I spoke carefully. I said, "Peace without choice is not peace. It is emptiness. You were hurt by a community that refused to feel. And now you are building that same community everywhere you go." He looked at me for a long time. Something moved in his face. Something I had not seen there before. Doubt. Real, genuine, painful doubt. Slowly, over the following days, Okeke began pulling back. I do not know how he did it, any more than I know how he had done the original thing. But the effects were immediate. Tension returned to the village like water returning to a dry riverbed. Fast, noisy, urgent. Arguments broke out. Voices rose. Men who had shaken hands over buried grievances found those grievances suddenly very much alive again. People were startled and confused by their own feelings. One morning, Okeke left. No goodbye. No note. No explanation. Just gone. I was the only one who watched him walk away down the eastern road, the same road he had arrived on, his hands empty, his back straight. And within a week, people had stopped mentioning his name. Within a month, they argued as if calm had never visited. Within a year, they had forgotten him completely. Everyone forgot. Everyone except me. Because I understood now what his story had really been about. Power is not proven by how much you control people. It is proven by how much freedom you are willing to leave untouched. Before you go, tell us in the comments, would you prefer a peaceful village with no arguments, or a village where everyone is free to disagree? Comment peace or freedom below. And if this is your first time watching our stories, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful African folktales and village stories every week.